Welcome to this demo walkthrough. Today we'll be reviewing some code for how to check your usage and retrieve a count of billable references between a specific time frame. So what you see on the screen is the Vizion API documentation. This is specifically our recipe section, which provides a simple format for showing step-by-step code demos for common use cases. And in this video, we will be focusing on the check number of billable references created between start and end date recipe. And this code is written in JavaScript, but you of course can take these steps and adapt them to your use case and your preferred programming language. So looking at the code first, we need to import dependencies. In this case, we're using Axios as the library to make our HTTP requests. We then set the start and end date. So this is where we're defining the date range of the references that we want to retrieve. The API URL, this is going to be our list active references endpoint. This is the endpoint where we can retrieve all of the references we're tracking. And then the number of results per page, because the response will be paginated. And here we are specifying that we want 25 references returned with each page of the response. And then we're setting our API key. So here you will replace this with your Vizion API key. And then defining these three variables, inactive count, active count, and total billable count. And these will all make more sense as we continue to go through the code. So now let's define the main function that will retrieve and count the references. So this function will take parameters. This first one is the page for pagination, so the starting page. So we want that equal to 1. Then we pass the start and end date, so the date range. This is what we defined here at the top. And then the active status. So the first part of this function is logging whether we're checking for active or inactive references. So this means both references that are currently active, so that would be active equals true, as well as the ones that you have unsubscribed from and are now inactive. So that would be active equals false. So for the purposes of calculating usage, we need to get both of those active and inactive references. So to illustrate this point further, this is our API reference, and this is the list active references endpoint that we're using in this demo. And here we can see that we have this active parameter, and we need to make a separate request so we can either pass true or false. And in this case, we want to count both. So we'll be making two separate requests in our code. So let's go back to the main function. We can see next we are making our GET request to the list active references endpoint. We're grabbing the response, and then we're counting the references returned where the container ID is not null. So if the container ID is null, this would indicate it's a parent reference created using a bill of lading, which does not count towards usage, only the child references. So we want to make sure we don't count those here. And then we update our count. So this is where those variables come into play that I'd previously mentioned. We have active count and inactive count. And we update these depending on whether we're checking active or inactive. We log the amount that we've counted from that page. And then this next section is checking to see if there are more pages to be retrieved using the page count metadata. And it will then call the function for each page. So once we've counted everything, we log that we have retrieved all of the references, and then we also provide a log of the total count. And then finally, this code is just calling the function that we just created with false. So it's going to grab all of the inactive references, and then we call the same function with true, so we can retrieve all of the active references. And then we have this total billable count that we finally display. So this would be the final total amount of billable references. So I've taken the code that we just put together and I'm going to run it in the terminal so we can see it working. Here we can see it's checking our inactive references, looping through all of the pages available. And then it gives us our total inactive count, 540. And then it goes on to check active references. And we can see it going through all of the pages, gives us our active count, and then it gives us our total billable reference count, which is 591. So that is it for this recipe. If you have any questions or feedback, please feel free to reach out to us at support@vizionapi.com.